Myanmar finds itself caught in a relentless cycle of violence and political turmoil. The military coup in February 2021 shattered any hopes of a peaceful transition to democracy. The junta, led by General Min Aung Hlaing, continues to tighten its grip on power, brutally suppressing any form of dissent. The country is now preparing for elections, tentatively scheduled for November 2025. However, these elections are widely seen as a sham, a desperate attempt by the military to legitimize its rule. The opposition, including the National League for Democracy, which won a landslide victory in the 2020 elections, has denounced the upcoming polls. They view it as a blatant attempt to erase their victory and solidify the military's hold on power. The junta, on the other hand, portrays the elections as a return to democracy, claiming that they are committed to a free and fair process. However, their actions speak louder than words. Experts and international observers are deeply skeptical about the junta's intentions. They predict a violent and chaotic election process, marred by intimidation, fraud, and violence. There are growing concerns about potential attacks on polling stations and disruptions by resistance groups. The junta's brutal crackdown on any form of dissent has created a climate of fear and distrust. Public sentiment is overwhelmingly against the elections. People view them as a cynical ploy by the military to cling to power. The military's brutal crackdown has only solidified this belief, further alienating the population. The international community also remains wary, unconvinced by the junta's rhetoric of democracy. Since the coup, Myanmar has witnessed a dramatic escalation in violence. The military has unleashed a brutal crackdown on any form of opposition. Peaceful protests have been met with lethal force, resulting in the deaths of thousands of civilians. Armed resistance groups have emerged across the country, engaging in fierce clashes with the military. The situation is particularly dire in Rakhine State, where fighting between the Myanmar military and the Arakan army has intensified. The escalation of violence has had a devastating impact on the civilian population. Thousands have been displaced from their homes, forced to flee to safer areas. The United Nations estimates that over 3.2 million people have been internally displaced since the coup, with 1.8 million displaced since October 2023 alone. The ongoing conflict has created a humanitarian crisis of immense proportions. The United Nations and other humanitarian organizations are struggling to provide aid to those in need. The junta has imposed severe restrictions on humanitarian access, making it extremely difficult to deliver essential supplies to conflict-affected areas. The situation is particularly dire in Rakhine State, where the military has blocked aid deliveries to camps for internally displaced Rohingya. The lack of access to food, water, shelter and medical care is exacerbating the suffering of millions. The international community has condemned the junta's obstruction of humanitarian aid and called for unimpeded access to all those in need. However, the junta remains defiant, prioritizing its own survival over the well-being of its people. The Rohingya, a Muslim minority group in Myanmar, have faced decades of systematic persecution and discrimination. The military's brutal crackdown in 2017, which the UN has called a textbook example of ethnic cleansing, forced over 700,000 Rohingya to flee to neighboring Bangladesh. Those who remain in Myanmar continue to face dire conditions. They are denied citizenship, freedom of movement, and access to basic services. The ongoing conflict has further exacerbated their plight. Rohingya villages have been caught in the crossfire between the military and armed groups. There have been credible reports of human rights abuses committed against Rohingya civilians, including extrajudicial killings, torture and sexual violence. The junta has also imposed restrictions on humanitarian aid to Rohingya camps, further compounding their suffering. The international community has condemned the junta's treatment of the Rohingya and called for an end to the violence. The International Criminal Court is currently investigating allegations of crimes against humanity committed against the Rohingya. However, the junta has refused to cooperate with the ICC and continues to deny any wrongdoing. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations has also been trying to address the crisis in Myanmar. However, ASEAN's efforts have been hampered by its own internal divisions and the junta's lack of cooperation. The international community must maintain pressure on the junta to end the violence, allow for unhindered humanitarian access, and address the root causes of the Rohingya crisis. Despite its brutal tactics, the military junta in Myanmar is facing mounting challenges. The resistance movement, comprising various armed groups and civilian activists, continues to pose a significant threat. The military has suffered heavy losses in clashes with these groups, and its grip on power appears to be weakening. The junta is also facing growing internal dissent. The economy is in shambles, and public anger at the military's mismanagement is on the rise. The junta's brutal crackdown has only alienated the population further, fueling resentment and resistance. The international community has imposed sanctions on the junta and its leaders in an attempt to pressure them into ending the violence and restoring democracy. While the situation in Myanmar remains dire, there is a glimmer of hope. The military's grip on power is not absolute, and the resistance movement continues to grow in strength. The international community must maintain its pressure on the junta and provide support to the pro-democracy movement. The people of Myanmar deserve a future free from violence, oppression, and fear. A future where their voices are heard, their rights are respected, and their aspirations for democracy are realized.